And welcome back to One on One with Nate and Aziz. Hashtag Triple O Show. Wait, this just in. James Harden has scored 1,000 points again in a game. Man.
Oh my damn!
What is going on?
Dude, I'm up. No, that's a 1,001. Bro. That was a and one.
Was that the triple step back or the 4-time step back?
See, I can't even tell these days. I just feel like it's all one motion. Yeah, what the hell is going on? What is this man doing?
Before we get into the particulars, let's just run over some numbers. He has been the leading scorer for the Houston Rockets in 26 straight games.
Wow.
Where over his last 5, he's averaging 52 points, 9.6 rebounds, 4.2 assists on
Insane.
17 three-point field goal attempts.
Insane.
32 field goal attempts. And for the month of January, he's averaging 45 points and 9 rebounds.
Yeah, he's I guess just new year, new heart. I don't know, bro.
Is it the beard? Is it the Adidas?
It's got to be something. Yeah, he was chugging on New Year's that just turned him into a beast. It's interesting to me how he's come along, and we see this every year, particularly with his assist numbers kind of continuing to go up. Do they need a guy like Chris Paul? With Harden kind of facilitating the majority of the offense, getting his spots, playing the pick and roll, he seems fairly comfortable in playing that position the majority of the game, and that gets him going with the scoring. Do you think once Chris Paul comes back, we're going to see some of these numbers drop?
Of course, and to your point, I think you don't need Chris Paul in the regular season because we've seen when you get to the playoffs, you just can't sustain, or James Harden can't sustain that kind of production because the games get a lot tougher. He's actually forced to play defense.
Exactly.
So, the 17 threes a game and the 30, field goal attempts really weighs in on you. So I think, for now in the regular season, you're playing a different team every other day and having people prepare. I think it works, but when the playoffs come, you definitely need a secondary ball handler because when you key in on James Harden, do you see guys like Austin Rivers and Eric Guardin being able to give you consistent scoring?
Yeah, you don't want to fall back on that.
Free Marquise Chris, by the way, but
he must just. I don't think he shows up in practice.
Is that it?
He seems like one of those guys that gets under his coach's skin or something. I don't know. But they need him. A guy that big with that much bounce and defensive ability.
Because you figure, it's of course the size differences between the two players, but what does Capella do that Marquise Chris can't? Doesn't have the ability,
I wouldn't say ability. I think it might be just an understanding of how to play his game.
Right.
We were just talking about this in the last segment. Getting him on the floor is the first thing, right? Understanding different sets, particularly in the pick and roll, because that's where they're just going to get the most work.
Yeah.
I don't see much difference. I think he's maybe a couple inches shorter.
Yeah, I think Capella's listed at 6'11", and Chris has been measured at 6'10".
Yeah,
so
6'10". Okay.
Like I said, obviously he's Capella's body's a little bit bigger, and he's probably an inch or two taller. But as far as the way he moves on the court, I feel like Marquise Chris could be doing those same things, especially in the second unit. So why not get him on the floor?
Right. I have seen him especially in Phoenix. He was pretty foul prone. But again, just bringing him off the bench for those extended minutes could be not a bad idea. I think we were talking about Houston being a little bit on that downhill spiral at the top of the year after they had a pretty good stretch. What is it that Harden, I guess, is doing other than his scoring? Is that what has really allowed them to win games?
I think so.
They're just outscoring teams?
He just dictates the pace of the game so much. and controls it offensively. And then with the way the rules are today's game, it
Yeah. You see, guys, we were watching. I think you watched that LA game.
yeah.
Guys were playing with their hands behind their back. Obviously that's to mock what's going on, but you're right, man. That slows the game down a lot. Getting to the foul line, scoring. Obviously, just forces the team to run that full court game. So, I'm guessing it's frustrating teams because there's not a lot you can do to adjust to these type of foul calls.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's got to be something else other than just denying him the ball that you can do to neutralize it. We're watching the Houston-Toronto game right now.
Right. I'm surprised Toronto's down by 18 right now. But what usually happens, Harden's going to have to go to the bench eventually. Yeah. So that's when they're going to need to make their run. One of my favorite memes is that in hell, you play James Harden one-on-one and he calls his own fouls. So I think that's what a lot of the teams are experiencing right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to give it up to him, though, like to have that kind of production over this sustained amount of time. Haven't seen this since that year Kobe averaged 35 for the season and had like that whole 40-point month. So you definitely got to give his hats off to him. But it's definitely, I think, gonna take a toll on him.
I would agree 100%. I think we've seen that every year for the past 5 years. He tends to lose a little bit of that steam. But maybe Houston's gonna have to look at something different once Paul comes back to kind of get them ready for the playoffs. Because again, one of their biggest concerns is just staying healthy. You got to get everybody kept on the floor. So we may see them kind of, push their minutes back a little bit.
Yeah, he's the guy that should be resting. But, with the way, like we said, they started off the year, they definitely needed this surge for them to get back into the playoff discussion. And they're not really in a position where they can take off games because the West is just a gauntlet.
Yeah, absolutely. And D'Antoni, he's just going to keep going from start to finish, I think. So, 4-3. Right. They might even look to add somebody else after getting Fareed. So,
what do you think their practices are like? Let's say when Chris Paul is out, the way like the last month, like is anybody else taking jump shots in practice?
I wouldn't think so. There's no reason. Everybody's a rebounding specialist, a pick and roll specialist, and they slide their feet well. But
Wait, did you just dribble the ball? Everybody online.
Yeah, seriously, you should just spend the majority of your time standing on either side of the free throw line, and just coach from there, man.
I think there's a stat somewhere out there about over this span of games that none of James Harden's points have been assisted on, like that.
Yeah, somebody did comment on that on ESPN.
Yeah,
is that true?
ESPN has a lot of wonky stats, but watching the games, I would assume, because you got to think about the way
he plays.
Assist rules are. Anything over 3 dribbles after a pass isn't.
The heck out of the ball, man.
You know what? I got a bold claim. I think I could beat James Harden one-on-one in 3 dribbles. It's the only. It might be possible.
What about the 2 steps? That's the important thing. If y'all open it up to 3 steps,
I don't know.
Dude, he could beat you with 1 dribble in 3 steps.
Very true. I feel like he was playing around one day, and he did a step back, and then he thought to himself, you know what? I'm open, but I could be more open. And so the double step back was created.
That probably makes sense.
So that's what I tell everybody in the gym now. I'm like, see, you're open, but you could be more open.
See, but what is it about Harden that, and this goes to his drawing of fouls too as well, because it ultimately is a major skill that he has to get away with things.
Drawing contact
what
is
definitely it about his step back that's so deceiving to officials and even to, just watching it quickly?
Honestly, I don't think there's anything that's deceiving about the step back. I'm going to call it the Jamal Crawford rule, where the officials are just watching. They're so mesmerized that they want to see what happens. They're like, oh, what did you do? Because, Jamal Crawford has the most 4-point plays in NBA history.
Right.
And so that just comes from, okay, I'm dribbling. I've always said Jamal Crawford is the only person in the NBA that's allowed to carry. As much as I love his handles, sometimes he holds the ball out there a little long. So
that's a specialty.
I think the same thing with James Harden. He's just sitting there dribbling, and so the ref's like, okay, what's he gonna do? Because a lot of times, if you watch, he's doing these step backs, he gets fouled on them because I feel like the ref's like, oh, he touched him, it's foul, can't touch him while he's doing his dribble. So
it's interesting. I mean, I would think that a guy like Steph Curry, and we've seen him attempt the move, to pull it off similarly, right? It's the shuffle of the feet is what really gets me. Harden does it in a little bit of a different way that not a lot of players can pull off smoothly. Because he steps back as he's dribbling.
Right.
So he's already in motion. He's already giving your perception the idea that he's going to move this way. Right. So when he moves that way again, you're just thinking, oh, that was just an extension of what he was already doing.
I think another part of that is even if you're breaking the rules, and this probably kind of goes on, and a life lesson too for you people out there. If you do it with confidence,
you do it in style.
if you're doing something wrong but you don't think it's wrong, people might just look at it like, oh, okay.
You are not freaking lying, bro. Go to any LA Fitness. These dudes travel and carry so much, but they're just like, what? That's how I dribble.
It's a good move,
right?
Or we all carry. That's on the list there. But I think that's really part of it because you see. I saw a highlight or a low light, I should say, of Steven Adams trying to do a Euro step earlier.
I saw that. Oh my God.
And it's just like, had he been more confident in the 3 steps, he probably could have got away with it. But you could tell he was just uncomfortable. Whereas, I was at a high school game, and it was actually my favorite player, BJ Boston. He came down. He was on the left side of the court, was dribbling with his left hand, going right, and he hesitated. He had the ball in his left hand, so dribbled, ball comes up in his left hand, hesitated with the upper body, threw the ball over to his right hand, dribbled again, and then went in and dunked it, and then just ran back down the court. Ref called nothing. And the coach on the other team was like, you got to be kidding me. And then what made it even worse was there was like a jumbotron on one of the baselines, and they replayed the play, and the coach was like, what do you want me to do?
Oh, man.
But if you watch the highlight, he was just like, after he did the move, he was just so confident, ran back down court like, this is what superstars do.
Man,
so
if you you show up like you know what you're doing, and
act like you've been there before.
Right?
So to your point, I think James Harden, he's just, he's perfected it so much. And then also I think that, because that rule only applies in the NBA with the zero gather step or whatever it is that they're calling it. So when you dribble the ball, and you're only supposed to get 2 steps, but they don't count that first step. They don't count the gather, so that's actually a step. But the way they're teaching the refs to officiate it is that you're counting 0, 1, 2 instead of 1, 2, 3, which is what it actually is. So it's a manipulation of the rules, but like you said, it's a skill.
It is a skill, yeah. And I think it works best for him because the way he releases too. It's almost with the motion of his body. I don't think a guy like Clay, who squares up to the basket so perfectly, could pull off
You're doubting Klay Thompson's handles?
I don't know. Never that, man. Not with the he's coming out of the slump too. But
right.
It's interesting. We'll see if he can keep this going. People are looking for him to score, a 70-point game here or there.
Maybe put up a Kobe 81.
Right. I don't see that happening, but it's exciting to see what the NBA ultimately wants, which is faster pace, more scoring, and more threes, man.
For sure. So we're going to take another break, and when we come back, so we talked about this. I didn't think it could be done, but I think I found some Conley and Marc Gasol trades. So I'm gonna see what you think about those when we come back.